Welcome to the City of Ferndale Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024, and I will open the meeting at 6:30 PM. We will start off with a roll call.
Hagfors.
Here.
Shelley.
Here.
Chair Foster.
Here.
Showalter.
Here.
Brazen.
Here.
And Councilman Polika.
Here.
And we heard from Akers Subakatani, and or have you heard also from Azar?
Yeah, through the chair, both Azar and Kramer reached out to note their absence.
All right, so all three of them would. All
Motion to excuse.
Second.
right, that's a motion by Brazen and a second by Hagfors. All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to approval of the agenda. This evening, we have a public hearing, 5A, which is consideration of a special land use for 3101 Bermuda. And no other business this evening.
Probably approval.
That's a motion by Shelley. Do you have a second?
Second.
A second by Brazen. All those in favor?
Aye.
This evening, we have approval of the minutes from the March 20th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
I move to accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Polika, second by Hagfors. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that brings us to the call to audience, and this is a moment on our agenda for anyone to come up to talk about anything that's not on the agenda. So if there is anyone, it doesn't look like it, so we can move on to our public hearing. Consideration of a special land use application and site plan review for 3101 Bermuda. We'll start with a overview and presentation from our staff. Mr. Bryce.
Good evening, planning commissioners. We have a site plan and a special land use review application request for 3101 Bermuda. They are proposing a 482-unit interior-only self-storage building. This property is zoned M1, light industrial. Pretty much the whole west side of Bermuda in that stretch of the city is zoned M1. So self-storage is permitted with the special land use. Just as a reminder, we can approve the site plan tonight and then make a recommendation on the special land use, which will go on to the city council. There's a second round of public notices and a second public hearing that'll accompany that. So the site currently is a vacant lot. It's nestled against the train tracks in the rear, and there's an existing self-storage facility just to the north of the site. So if you look at the site here, you can see Bermuda, which goes northwest, kind of parallel to the train tracks in the rear, and then the existing Storage Rentals of America, which has the drive-up units that you can imagine. See them here on this aerial. So they're proposing a interior-only self-storage on this parcel that's highlighted in red. So if you drive by, you might have noticed a vacant piece of grass, and that's part of this. There are some environmental considerations at the site. So I believe many years ago, for many decades, this was a chemical facility. It was demolished, and there was some remediation done, I believe in the late 90s, maybe the early 2000s. I touched base with Eagle, so that's the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. So they're aware of this project. I know the applicant's team has been discussing with them what they will need to do. I believe in the coming months they will engage a formal agreement, which is legally binding, and it requires the applicant to do a number of remediation items for the site. It's my understanding that the site has done some remediation, so it's not like it's been untouched since the days, but the applicant will have to do a lot of investigation to ensure that nothing has gotten worse, that the existing subterranean walls are still in effect. And I believe there are other things that Eagle pays attention to now that maybe they didn't back then, but they are still required to remediate. So they've been discussing that with us, also with Eagle. They provided a Phase 1 environmental assessment report to our city engineer. So they've given us these things. So here are the preliminary site plan and engineering for the site. So it features an access point off of Bermuda. It's going to wrap around the building. So the building is up front. It's taking up 80% of the frontage in accordance with our zoning ordinance. That driveway wraps around the building. There's a loading zone that's in the rear, so it's not visible from the street. And the driveway connects to the existing storage site to the north. There's a few parking spaces up in the front. Our zoning ordinance has a pretty low requirement for self-storage. So there's really only a handful of spaces. I mean, keep in mind, these things are really only visited by people who are dropping off their stuff, and then they don't come back for quite a long time. So they've got their ADA spaces, they've got the charging spaces, they provided the bicycle parking spaces out front. In terms of stormwater detention, they are proposing a detention pond, which is a little bit unique in the city, but that's also located in the rear.
Detention pond, not detention pond, right?
Right, and I do get those mixed up, and I'm sure the applicant can
That's
clarify
how
that
often
for
we
me.
have them in Ferndale.
So in terms of landscaping, significant tree and shrub coverage along the front, parking lot screening. Our ordinance actually requires a surprising amount of trees and shrubs to surround the retention pond. So they've provided those as well. Here are some perspectives of the site, some elevations. I think we have more elevations below. A typical floor plan for a facility like this, a wide variety of storage units of different sizes, a small office and a break room, public restroom. There are a number of ADA compliant units on the first floor. And then for floors 2 and 3, it's the same kind of layout with a variety of unit sizes and counts. Here's another look at the elevations of the building. So they are proposing architectural metal cladding and composite panels for most of the face of the building. They do propose corrugated metal to be the main percentage on the rear. So this south architectural elevation is the one that's not visible from the right-of-way, and it does face the train tracks. Corrugated metal is not a permitted material, but it can be waived by the Planning Commission if you so choose, and you can allow that corrugated metal as proposed. Other than that, they did comply with some of our requirements, such as fenestration requirements, door access requirements. Again, I mean, some of our ordinance seems to be designed more for multi-tenant spaces, but they still were able to comply with the number of pedestrian entrances to the building. So in terms of other request notes, they do back up to that north property. And so we just wanted to make sure in the event that these properties sell, or maybe they don't sell together, that there's some kind of easement that allows this access, especially with the egress door on the west side of the building. So they will comply and, submit an agreement for us to review with the city attorney. There's, of course, the environmental considerations, just to make sure they're compliant with Eagle. During a final check-in with the plan, I noticed that we don't have the percentages, so I included a condition that they'll demonstrate all the proper percentages on the plan. Visually, I'm sure they're meeting it, but we just want to see that number. And then for bicycle parking, they do require, I believe, 18 total on the site, so that'd be 11 interior, 7 exterior. they are requesting a waiver of 10 parking spaces with the rationale that people can store their bikes inside. I don't think they're anticipated to have much in the way of, employees going to the site. And I believe, what else? There's something else. I think that part of the rationale is that people aren't going to be riding their bikes to here with all their stuff. So they have requested a waiver of 10 bicycle parking spaces. So they do have 8 outside and out front. I think that's all I have. So I'd like to invite the applicant up. So we do have Alexa Falbo, who drove in from Chicago this morning. You want to say a few words about the site?
Thanks. And just while she's coming up, thank you, Kyle. And so we'll have the applicant provide further detail on the application, and then I will open up for a public hearing, which anyone can come up and speak during that public hearing before we'll move to the commission for deliberation. So welcome. Thanks for coming, Alexa.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Again, my name's Alexa Falbo. I'm with Kimley Horn. We're the civil engineer for this project. And I'm here on behalf of Storage Rentals of America. The director of development, Bo Raich, unfortunately had some flight issues today, so he wanted to apologize for not being able to be here. But I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. I think Kyle did a great job of covering, all the components of this project. I'll just add a few more things. Storage Rentals of America purchased this property a few years ago. So they obviously have the existing site and have this open property that they'd like to expand and do this 3-story building on. But we've been meeting with the city for a couple years now to come up with a good site plan, and we feel really confident with the one that we've put in front of you today. Storage Rentals of America owns and operates properties all over the U.S., so they have a lot of experience with these types of expansions and redevelopment projects. But we feel, this project will really benefit the community. Kyle touched on, we're right up against the railroad tracks, and we feel with the architectural components and landscape improvements that we're proposing, it'll create a really nice buffer along Bermuda Street. In addition, this is a use that doesn't really generate much traffic at all. People come, drop off their stuff in their storage unit, and then they're not really visiting again until they're taking their stuff out. So, low traffic usage, low utility usage as well, but also the added tax benefits. So, I think Kyle touched on the Eagle component too. We are aware of the environmental concerns on the property, and we're having conversations with Eagle to understand the process, if assuming we get approval tonight to proceed with the legal and permitting process. But I think with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you. All right. So just, again, we will open up for a public hearing. As Kyle stated, tonight we will be making a recommendation to the city council, who has the final approval on the special land use, and also reviewing the site plan, which the commission has the final approval on. So this will come again before the city council at a future date. So with that, I would like to open up the public hearing for consideration of a special land use application and site plan, or special land use application for 3101 Bermuda. Would anyone like to speak on it? Just observers? All right. With no one coming storming the dais, I will close the public hearing at 6:44. All right. Actually don't really have a preference this evening. Does anyone have a place where they would like to begin?
For the chair, I'd like to discuss you're asking for a waiver for the architectural compatibility guidelines and applying corrugated metal. Do you have a sample of the corrugated metal that you plan on using? I'd like to see the material before I want to consider a waiver on the material.
I don't have a sample on hand. I think in the architectural elevations, I think we provide details, but I don't have a physical sample with me today. We can definitely provide that. But yeah, I mean, self-storage has a very low margin, and this is a pretty standard typical building that we use across the US. So these are our standard materials we've been putting up.
And I realize that it's, just when it comes to breaking our ordinance, to asking for a variance on our ordinance, I would like to see a reason beyond just cost. Because we have it as a prohibited material, but we do allow certain metal panels in our guidelines, such as insulated metal panel, composite metal panels. And I don't know if you have a composite metal panel or if this is an insulated metal panel, then it complies. But if it's just an exposed fastener corrugated material, then it wouldn't apply, and that would be considered a prohibited material.
I'm sorry, I'm not an architect by trade, so this sometimes goes over my head. But, so I know that we call out corrugated metal and then architectural metal cladding, so we call out both. Let me see.
So there is an,
Good question, whether it's an insulated metal panel or not.
so there would be the option, potentially for us to say what we would prefer, or give some sort of guidelines to staff, and that staff could review the final, building materials at a future date. So I just want to, so if we have any guidance, since we don't have the material in front of us to look at.
And just in general, for the staff, if we do ask for variances in materials, if you could ask the applicants to bring physical samples of the materials so we can take a look at what we'd be accepting at that point.
Through the chair, I have some follow-up architectural questions. So you mentioned that these are typical buildings that they build across the US. Is this like a standard building that then gets retrofitted to whatever city,
Like a prototypical building?
prototype?
Each site that they kind of expand on is very different, so we kind of fit each one differently. I think the client is listening, so he's calling right now. He might have some insight on the metal.
So my follow-up question to that is the gable on the entries part of the I guess the standard design for entries across the US? Like, is it part of the brand for the company?
I do know the colors are definitely a part of the branding, and I think most of them are. But I can hear you.
I think we had the insulated metal panel with the hidden fasteners on the front. I think we were asking to use the corrugated metal on the back that was just facing the railroad track.
And what's the backup to the corrugated metal?
I mean, we could just use insulated metal on the back side facing the tracks. It's just expensive. Something that people.
Well, so what's the backup to this corrugated metal panel? Is it CMU?
Yeah, I mean that would be much more expensive. We use a structural steel for the we use a structural steel framing, for the structure. So we have to that would be in lieu of CMU would be in lieu of that. So we just probably use insulated metal panel backside. I'd have to look at just what would be the most cost effective if we were to get rid of the corrugated metal panel. What I can do is I can invert the corrugated metal panel and run it sideways, and it actually looks pretty nice. It does it. We can kind of play some games with the corrugated metal panel, and I can show you some examples where it doesn't look like a Quonset hut or an industrial building.
So going back to my question about the gable, I think most of the details on here, like if just up the road, there's some multifamily that has similar type of details on the corner. And you've got these gabled entries, and you made the effort on the corners, and I think you could do better, even though it's not our place really to say how to do the design of the building. I think it's suggested, and I think it would go a long way too, if we're to make some trades with accepting corrugated, it might be, I think if we can keep the look of the, sort of that corridor, I think it might help go a long way.
Bo Rach with Storage Rentals of America. Property owner. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize, I couldn't be there. My flight got delayed and I was trying frantically to get up there.
Thank you. Anything else on the design or building materials?
Site plan wise, which is I think the main goal.
So sorry, just want to make sure that there's nothing else on the designer building materials? Okay. Go ahead.
I was gonna say site plan wise, I think that
If
the
we'd
main
like
goal.
to have like a sidebar, if, I could set up a call with the architect and we can sort of review specifically, any of the concerns of the architecture with the architect on a call before we kind of represent anything. I'd be happy to do that as well.
Thanks. Yeah, well, we will provide, staff has guidance now, and so we'll be able to take care of that at a later time.
Okay.
Thank you.
So going to site plan, I think which was the main point. As far as the layout of the site goes, I think the request makes sense to me. Parking makes sense to me. Path that you guys are showing, if the property gets split up in the future makes sense. The retention or the retention pond, like you guys mentioned, it's not something that's typical to Ferndale. But I mean, that makes it like and you've got the proper landscaping around it. I don't know if there's gonna be any issues with the neighbors that mosquitoes or something. in the
It's
future.
the railroad.
It's the railroad side.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it won't be a wet bottom, it'll be dry, but we're just trying to capture and treat like the first flush for water quality purposes. But that will get worked out with final engineering and working through things with Eagle as well, so.
Well, I do have a question actually on the parking, just on the site. I don't have an issue with that, but I just wanted to understand the concept behind why having the driveway on the front end, and it's probably to have it, broken up, or away. Oh, sorry, no, there actually is no existing driveway on the north end. So sorry, it does actually make more sense to have the driveway on the other side of the property. Did you look at that?
Yes, we had a few conversations with the fire department to make sure we had adequate, like, fire access. And we had looked at a few different locations for the driveway, and ended up in this location, which made more sense. There's also a bunch of really large utility poles along Bermuda, so that was also kind of limiting on where we could place it. But kind of landed on this medium spot.
Okay, thanks. I just, as you're pulling up, the first thing you're going to see is really well, I guess I'm from the south, so I'm assuming you're pulling up from the south, but not everyone does. But, you're just adding that parking lot in front of it versus having the building, which was one of the reasons why I thought it would look better flip-flopped, as well as there is a driveway just to the south of it for that parking lot. And so having drive next to drive causes more opportunity for incidents. But thank you for the explanation there. In terms of circulation, I just find it surprising that we requested more bike parking than car parking for the site. So I just think that may be something that we can look at as we do our zoning ordinance update. Doesn't really sound like it.
Yeah, I would say our ordinance is a little funny sometimes about bicycle parking, and sometimes it can be a little overkill. And frankly, it's not often very specific into the type of use. It says blanket industrial, which doesn't give us a lot of wiggle room. So I do believe in the current draft, so the new ordinance, it's a little more detailed and reined in to avoid situations like this.
Okay. Well, I actually like having the flexibility in this instance that we can waive it. So I think that the proposal is consistent with what I would expect. Anything else in terms of circulation on the site?
Now, I have several questions, but none of these has to do with that.
Well, circulation, I guess probably my question is circulation of the pedestrian. So I know currently the site doesn't have any kind of sidewalks or anything on it, but it's kind of as part of the special land use, having the addition of the sidewalk in the hopes that that continues on with every other building that's being redeveloped on the corridor. I think I would like to see kind of that addition of the sidewalk along the site. Even though it will unfortunately be a sidewalk to nowhere at this time, I know as future investment, in the community as well as possible redevelopment to the south could lead to more of a completed sidewalk network.
If I could for that, that's completely understandable. I just want to, make it clear, there is no sidewalk on either side, both, to the north and to the south. We do have the gigantic power lines there. So I checked in with the city engineer. I think it's possible to put in the sidewalk, but especially when you go north to the adjacent property. I mean, there's a pretty large berm there, so it probably requires some kind of retaining wall if they were ever to put in a sidewalk on the adjacent property. So those are just some of the factors when we went into considering this. So I think, it's something that we can consider, as we go through this, but as of right now, we felt okay with not moving forward with it, just because there is the rest of the sidewalk coverage in the neighborhood.
I get you.
I would tend to agree with Commissioner Hagfors. If we don't require anyone to put in sidewalks, then we won't have them. And I get that it is a sidewalk to nowhere as well, and that there are circumstances, but along the same lines of what Hagfors says, that we don't exactly know what the future holds, but if we don't start somewhere, we don't really improve.
And this is also an area that is, that you have the flats of Iron Ridge right around the corner. You have an area that has the potential to take off in the future. I think there's some potential for there to be future development. So I would like to be able to cultivate that if it does happen.
Through the chair. Actually, that was one of the items that I did have was pedestrian sidewalks. I agree. I would like to see them installed there too, even though they might only go from one end of the site to the other. I think I think we need to be consistent on that. If we're going to be putting them in the industrial areas, there's no reason why we can't have it here as well.
We can take a look, like I said, we do have some utility poles that we would have to kind of weave in and out of, take a look at the grading. Is that something we can work with staff on? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
Through the chair. We've had situations where sidewalks have had to go around certain things. There really aren't any real mature trees. So if there were mature trees, I'd say, definitely go around them. But in this instance, there's just a couple of utility poles. The large poles are right on the edge of the curb, so the sidewalk could actually happen on the opposite side of the large utility poles, but I only see maybe one or two wooden poles that actually cross the street. And I don't think that's a problem going around those.
Through the chair, those wooden poles may even be replaced as part of the construction process, because it looks like the particular one that I'm seeing looks like it could have been from the previous use, which would probably already have to be upgraded to meet the current needs of this future development.
I have several other issues.
Okay.
If I can raise
ahead.
those. So railroad access, I just want to make sure that there's no intention of having the railroad stop cars to unload anything off of the railroads to load into the facilities.
No.
No.
Okay, just want to make sure. We have a big issue with trains blocking roads, and I don't want a business all of a sudden unloading stuff into a storage facility. I am a bit concerned. I know that you're saying that it's a dry, what did we say it was? Detention pond? Is there going to be a fence along the railroad tracks so that no one can access that? I know when I was a kid, we lived by railroad tracks. We were playing along those tracks all the time, and I'm sure there's kids that do that today. My only concern is that, you know, a kid get on the property, fall into the ditch, someone get hurt.
I believe there's an existing fence line right along that property line.
Is?
And
Okay.
that will remain.
Okay.
Let me just pull up the survey just to double
And
check,
then,
but.
Alexa, you
yeah.
also said it was intended to be a dry pond, and so it's only when there's, would be events that it would fill up, but typically the water would actually be drained out, so it's not typically.
Well, I'm not necessarily worried about someone drowning, just falling down, you know, a little kid falling down a 3-foot, you know, steep incline could hurt themselves. But if a parent brings them on the property, that's their, they have to worry about that. Your elevations show north, south, east, west, but the building is on an angle, so I'm a little bit confused about which is north, south, east, west. In the drawing that you have displayed on the screen, in the center of the building, you have this, it looks like a large access area. But when I look at the drawings, that looks to me like that's the face of Bermuda,
The north elevation?
the north elevation.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So north is facing Bermuda, south is facing the train tracks.
Okay. So if I look at the south elevation and then you go back to that drawing, where is that? You right in the
That's the
center of the
railroad.
building, you're calling out the
Oh,
you're calling out almost like it's a
Like a loading zone.
yeah, like a loading zone, but
Yeah.
it's a wall. So I'm confused as to what the loading zone is for.
That's fair. And just for all clarity, we were a little bit ahead of the architects when we started design. So it looks like in this rendering, it looks like there will be 2 loading zone areas then
Okay.
for customers to pull up with their moving trucks and unload and get access into the building.
Okay,
So we can update that on our site plan.
Yeah,
Okay.
because the building is long, we didn't want the travel distance from the loading area to the farthest unit. So we did, I must not have updated Alexa, we split it up into 2 loading zones
okay.
to make easier customer access to all areas of the building, and then we just forgot to update it on the civil.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted clarity on that because it looked to me like you were almost, the building was going to be flipped around and I was worried that that blank wall was going to be on the side of Bermuda. Now, is there going to be any access, like door access on the Bermuda side, or is all access going to be on the south and east?
East, yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the main office will be off of the east elevation.
Okay,
And then, so that's where like new customers can go to sign up or whatever.
Alexa, we're just gonna utilize the existing office at the, we're gonna utilize the existing office at the storage facility. We're gonna build it out so it could be an office at a later date. We're gonna have parking for it. It can be built out later. So, I mean, I guess we should just assume that there's gonna be an office there, but for the foreseeable future, we'll just use our existing office.
okay. And then the last thing, because this is facing, I mean, you're right on a industrial residential border. I do have some concerns about the facade, and I know that you have a standard look, but it's just a lot of blank wall for me. you know, that it being facing all residential. People have their backyards that are going to be looking to that. Some people have their front yards that are going to be looking toward that. And I'd just like to see less white wall and maybe more fake windows
Or something to break it up.
or something to break it up. But it just, it's going to be a long piece of property, and I just, for people to have to live, you know, across from it, it just seems like it's a lot of blank, no offense, but unattractive blankness. I like what you have, you know, the windows on the ends and you have the two sections in the middle. I feel like I need a little bit more for me.
So you're trying to reference the storage facility on Marshall kind of as, because there's a lot of blank fake windows on that to make it look less of a hulking.
Yes.
Yeah, I get
Yeah,
you.
yeah. And I'm not saying it has to duplicate that.
No,
you know,
yeah.
not to that, because that does have a lot of fake windows.
Yes.
I just like to see less blank wall and maybe a little more of the windows.
Like they have on the opposite elevation,
On
but
the
less,
opposite.
so like the north elevation versus the south elevation has.
No, I'm talking about the Bermuda.
The
Where
north
it's
elevation.
white. Yeah, I'm not talking about the train side. I'm not,
Oh.
that doesn't bother me.
Okay.
It's the Bermuda side. It's these big blank white sections, or gray. I'm assuming it's white. I'd just like to see a little more detail in those white sections.
Bo, would there be an opportunity, I'm trying to look at the floor plan layout right now, to add faux windows there, or display windows?
Some material change or a
Yeah, I'm
break.
trying to look at the units that are there, because when we add those in, we lose square footage on those units.
Well, I don't mean real windows. I'm talking about just,
Play windows there, because I don't think the neighbors want to be looking at like lit up storage corridors with the doors. I can put like, I could just add some, architectural, like a step out there. Let me just play with it with my architect. I hear what you're saying, and I'm sure I could play with that facade. I could add some more step outs, or, you know, I can add some faux windows. I can do something. I mean, I'm not an architect. Let my architect come up with a better idea than I can come up with. You're just worried about those blank sections of insulated metal panel.
yeah. If it was all in an industrial area, you know, if you had a factory that was across the street from it, I wouldn't worry so much, but it's all residential right across the street. And so that's what I worry about. And again, I'm fine with fake windows. I need something to break up those walls.
I think a good way to think of it is,
Like stepping out and changing the color of the insulated metal panel and doing some sort of texture. You know, there's plenty of things I can do that
right.
I can work with staff and present a couple options or something like that. We can work around that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, and
thank
I think a good way to think about it is that building facade is what, 260 feet long, and the residential neighborhood, our buildings are typically like 30 to 40 feet in width. And so having more variation probably at that
Interval.
scale, thank you, would be more fitting for that neighborhood. So hopefully that can be a more helpful guidance.
I know we were messing around with like the trying to get to the glass requirement, and then the architect might have portioned when we got to the glass requirement on the first floor, he might have portioned those step outs along the side. And I remember there being one that was more detailed, that had more sort of architectural detail. So let me, I could fix that. Let me just get with you. I'll get something in front of you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Counselor Palico?
Not from my end.
Anyone else have further details, questions or
Oh,
comments?
sorry, I do have my standard. I'm assuming all the electrical connections and everything, meters will all be on the railroad side of the building, not on the Bermuda side of the building.
Right,
Okay,
more of the back of house, backside on the railroad.
excellent.
Yeah.
From the perspective, it looks like the rooftop utilities are hidden from view, but not from the flat-on elevation. But I assume that they're positioned so that they would be,
The depth of the building.
They're set back quite a bit.
Set back.
yeah, okay.
If you look at the east elevation, you can see how they're.
Ah, perfect, thank you. All right. Bikes, materials, retention. All right, so I think that was all that I had as well. So we did have a couple of things on the site plan in terms of adding sidewalks to update the elevations, to see what the final building material is, and for staff to review final elevations based on our recommendations. And was there another third that I'm missing? That was it. So I mentioned that in terms of building materials and architectural design. So I think we're good. I think the waiver is already part of the packet recommended motion. So if there's no further questions for our applicants, we could start with a motion on the special land use. And we'll also have a motion for the parking reduction in terms of the, regarding the bikes parking, and then we'll have a site plan motion.
So I will try the special land use. So I motion the matter of the property located at, what is it, 3101 Bermuda? Thank you.
Well,
oh.
through the chair, just a note of clarification. So 3101 Bermuda is like the address of the existing property.
Right.
So they will get a new address, which has not been set yet. So it's,
Sidewall number then?
yeah, so 3101 has been, the talking point for this, but I did notice for the Sidwell number that's listed there.
Okay, so I'll motion the matter of property located at Sidwell number 242527252005. After a public hearing was held as set for this day and place, Plan Commission recommends the City Council approval of the special land use application for a self-storage facility based on plans dated March 8th, 2024, with the following findings, and all 5 findings attached.
Thank you. Have a motion by Hagfors,
Second.
seconded by Michele. May I have a roll call vote, please?
We'll do some,
Or, sorry, do we have any discussion on the motion for the special land
Is
use?
there anything else that we need to capture in the findings based on our conversation?
yeah, can you send, what page are the findings on?
16.
So the findings are per the special land use, so that the proposed development does not detract from, erode, or reduce the desirability or economic viability. The site is designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so to be harmonious with existing or attendant character. The site is, I'm paraphrasing here, apologies. Site is served adequately by existing public services and facilities. Proposed improvement to this site does enhance the public health, safety, and welfare and economic benefit, and that the plans are consistent with the intent and purposes of this chapter. And so I think that the items that we mentioned are more in line with the site plan versus the special land use, but I certainly welcome any further discussion on the motion. All right, roll call vote.
Brazen,
Yes.
Councilman Polika,
Yes.
Hagfors,
Yes.
Michele,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
and Chair Foster.
Yes. All right, so we've recommended approval of the special land use. City council will hear this for a final approval. And so before our site plan motion, we would require parking reduction, approval motion for the reduction of the bike parking spaces.
So in the matter of property located at Sidwell number 24, 25, 27, 252, 005, the Planning Commission approves the parking reduction request of 10 bicycle parking spaces based on plans dated March 8th, 2024, with the following findings and subject to the following findings in alignment, section 24-223. And that finding is shared parking by multiple uses with peak parking demands during differing times of the day or the days of the week.
Second.
That is a motion by Hagfors, second by Michele. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, just clarification. So we're asking for, or they're asking for a request of 10 bike spaces reduction?
Because there's a total of 18 required based on the zoning ordinance.
And it's 11 internal, 7 external, they're doing 8 external.
Gotcha. But no issue with the vehicle parking?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
But people don't usually go to storage units and hang out for the evening, so usually
I
unload
mean, they're
and
not
get
carrying
out.
boxes on their bicycle and,
Yep. I want to see someone carry a box on a bicycle, honestly. I'm looking forward to that. That would be a very Ferndale thing.
yeah, it would be. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
In Portland, you could get mattresses delivered by bike.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, they have like little like bucket bikes, so you can toss something in. So it'll happen. We'll take a picture for you. Yep.
All right, I'll have a roll call vote on the motion.
Showalter,
Yes.
Brazen,
Yes.
Councilman Polika,
Yes.
Hagfors,
Yes.
Michele,
Yes.
Chair Foster.
Yes. Motion is approved. All right, and so for the site plan, I believe we've discussed amending the finding number 5 and adding, amending condition 6 and potentially adding a condition number 7.
I
Or
will,
actually could probably all be in 6. Are you good?
I will attempt. You may have to help me on this one. Okay, so in the matter of the property located at Sidwell number 24, 25, 27, 252, 005, the Planning Commission approves a site plan based on plans dated March 8th, 2024, with the following findings and subject to the following conditions, with an adjustment to finding number 5, that we are asking the city staff to work with the applicant on the architectural materials for the south-facing elevation, is that correct? And then for the conditions, for condition number 6, asking city staff again to work with the applicant on the compliant building materials, and then adding an additional condition number 7, which is the addition of sidewalk along Bermuda on the property to improve walkability of the site. That sum it up?
Motion by Hagfors,
Second.
second by Michele.
Through the chair, does that include my request for changes to the elevation for more details?
That would be,
Want to detail that specifically in 6 of the conditions?
yep, so under condition 6, when we talked about the city staff is going to work with the applicant on the compliance, that not only goes for the siding, but it also goes for the architectural appearance of the north elevation on how it coordinates with the adjoining residential uses across the street.
Okay, actually, I think I would, what did you say about the south elevation?
South elevation is the material for number 5. I'm sorry, on findings number 5 is the material for the south elevation.
Okay, I think we wanted to verify all the building materials though, didn't we? Or all the corrugated metal?
Corrugated metal only existed
On
on
the
the
south
south side.
elevation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, just so I'm understanding for finding number 5, the commission is waiving the prohibition of corrugated metal. And what is like the further edit to that finding?
I don't know if we're waiving the condition for corrugated
No,
metal.
I think we're
correct?
asking for it to be the same material as the rest of the building, correct?
To be
Yeah, I don't-
a,
Well, we requested, Matt requested that a sample for the determination. So I think it's deferring the waiving of the exterior material for the south based on staff review.
Well, and also the fact that corrugated material is a prohibited material, and I didn't feel that it was the need to use a prohibited material was demonstrated.
but we want it, so would we be comfortable with approving so is, the insulated metal already, is it improved material?
Insulated
Yeah.
metal is approved material,
Okay.
as well as a composite material such as like an Aluca bond or aluminum composite material, that kind of stuff. But I believe that insulated metal was what was used elsewhere.
It's a fair comment, Matt, about demonstrating a need.
So to be clear, I mean, we would be essentially striking
Striking number 5.
number
then.
5, if that's the will of the commission, and if it's okay with the applicant to,
And see, that's how our ordinance currently reads, and I don't see unless other people disagree.
Alexa, you can come up if you want, but, I mean, that is from what I'm seeing, the commission does not want to waive the corrugated metal requirement for the rear elevation. I mean, is that okay with your team?
Well,
So
Uh,
I'd prefer not to have a conversation
Right.
this way. So, we have a couple options. We have the ability to come back. We could approve the site plan, but come back. Could we do that? Is that-
I think we would have to table.
Just table the
Yeah,
site
we have
plan
to
with
table
a,
until we can determine that, I think.
and they're still having to go to city council for the site plan, special land use approval anyways.
Well, through the chair, does the the site plan approval have to be completed before council
No.
approves special land use? I
think that's a weird
That could still
technicality.
move on. I mean, technically, they can't move on with the project until council approves the special land use, so technically,
So if we could see this in 2 weeks.
well, and looking at how,
no.
No,
Stops there.
we're just site plan.
Yeah.
and while looking at the waiver, how is I know that we have a new ordinance coming out, and being able, like, how does the new ordinance, with the way it's being written, address this? If the ordinance that's coming out in maybe a few months might allow for exposed fastener metal siding systems, then I might be more willing to discuss that, but
Well, I think we have to, I think we have to make the decision on the merits of, what we have today. We do have the waiver to waive based on, the merits of the project and, based on what our ordinance requires, and we can waive if we think it's acceptable for that site. But
I think I guess the question for me would be then, if we were to approve it based on the fact that staff can review the material and the client can show a demonstrated need,
and
that'd be our
And looking at the lines, actually, the way the ordinance is written, it says corrugated. If there's a way to pick a rain screen system or that's not corrugated, it's technically not a a prohibited material. I don't necessarily agree with the way the that's a different talk. But if it's not a corrugated material and you pick a rain screen system that might be more of a concealed fastener rain screen system that's not a corrugated material, then it's no longer a prohibited material. It's not clearly defined in that, but when I think of corrugated material, I think of bottom of the line exposed fastener. You see the fasteners screwed into the steel every 16 inches, and in 5 years those fasteners are rusting out, or they're different colors, and you see the little rust lines down the corrugation. And without knowing that that's going to be the case, I don't really think that that's a great look, and I think that's what the ordinance is trying to prevent.
What I'm concerned about, and no offense to staff, but staff are not architects, and won't have a lot of guidance if we just send it back to them. So I think we have, two options, either to table or to provide guidance to staff that then the applicant will have to, demonstrate. So for instance, our ordinance does require that building materials shall be durable, weather-resistant, rust-proof, and kept in good condition. And so if they can demonstrate with the sample and the final materials that they're providing to staff to demonstrate that this will be a material that meets certain conditions that we put on it, that's one method that we could have. Or we come back in 2 weeks and we review with more details. Or we approve with what we have. All right, sorry, we can't, yeah.
Yeah, but we hear you, but I mean, it's not in the microphone, and it's not on the record, unfortunately. So, I mean, Alexa, if you want to come up and speak, just
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to work with staff on this. If you guys want to provide the provisions so we can continue and proceed, we're happy to work with staff on this under your provisions.
Do you feel comfortable providing those provisions and then letting staff handle?
Yeah, if staff handles it, then I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, which specific,
Well, through the chair, and I agree with Matt in that, or actually it may have been you, Chair Foster, that said it needs to be a material that meets the criteria of, not rusting, doesn't, I can't remember what you stated. You said it so eloquently, but it was this laundry list of things that, and I'm fine if there's a material that imitates corrugated metal, but isn't corrugated metal, then.
all right, so the provisions that we want to provide in terms of the building materials, and we can add to this, but as part of section 24-184, building materials in
Maybe it has a coating that lasts 20 years or something.
Sure, and all these products should have the coatings. But without seeing the material, I don't know if they're going to, it looks like it's PEMB USA. I've never heard of that manufacturer. And so it looks like they have a multitude of different products. So without seeing that product, I don't know what we're approving. And I don't know, I mean, if it's galvanized metal deck slapped on the side, then that's not acceptable. But if it's an actual architectural grade product, then that's a little bit better. But without just saying that I want to approve corrugated metal leaves a lot open. I don't know what that is.
all right, so, but we have to also provide guidance. So section 24, 184D1E, building materials shall be durable, weather-resistant, rust-proof, and kept in good condition to meet building code by the property owner or tenant at all times. Do we want to add anything to that provision, other than our general discussion that the applicant has already heard, as well as staff? Is architectural grade a specific actual term, or
It is a term.
do we want to add actual architectural grade?
I don't think it would, I think as long, if it's,
If it's not in our ordinance.
that's kind of what if it's not in our ordinance, I don't really want to add it to the ordinance and put an extra burden on them, because I don't want to I don't want to rewrite the ordinance for this.
Well, the ordinance does state architectural metal panel as the material that's allowable. And so it is stated in our ordinance. I think that was the intent behind calling it architectural metal panel.
I think, can you guys hear me? Can I say something?
Yes.
You put it up to the,
I think what I'm trying to get at is leave the door open for a material that could, under some circumstances, appear to be a corrugated metal, but allow me to at least show to staff that I can install it in a way and make sure it's coated and it's durable and it's not going to rust. That would save me some money, but still come up with a nice looking product that would be sort of consistent with the design intent of the code. I can save a lot of money that way, that I can put more money up into the front facade. It's not visible from Bermuda Street. It's just facing the railroad tracks. So it may be we're on another building. If you installed it, didn't do the coatings, we use top quality paints on all our product. I mean, we're a retail business. We want to look good for our customers and make sure our facility is nice. We are the owner operator of this. We will hold this asset for at least 10, if not 20 years, if this doesn't wind up in one of our evergreen funds that we'll own forever. So it's not like we're not a developer that builds to go then sell. The minute we lease it up, and then we're not worried about the quality, because we're going to be owning this for a long time. So we want to make sure that whatever we build is going to look good in 5 or 10 years, because that's going to be, because we're the ones maintaining it. So
We appreciate that.
I don't want to sit here and sell you on any given material right now, but if you could put it in staff's hands and let them kind of make the final decision based on what I can demonstrate that we can do after some more research. That's
Yes, thank you. We appreciate that. We just want to make sure that since staff are not architectural experts, as our planning commissioners are, that they have the
Architectural metal panel is a very specific thing, so that's what the code.
That's why you're preferring to not use that language? Okay, thank you.
through the chair, but I would like staff to have a sample of the material that will be used,
Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And we do appreciate your commitment to the quality. I will just add, though, that we are concerned more about the 50-year version than the 10-year vision. So we're just doing our jobs as well, so we appreciate that. All right, so is everyone then comfortable with moving forward with the conversation that we've had? I think we need probably a friendly amendment to condition number 5, as well as finding number 5.
Wait, you mean condition number 6?
Yes.
Okay, so through the chair, can you assist me with getting
Sure.
that finding number 5?
So from what
update?
I have heard,
Thank you.
so finding number 5 in the packet is that the planning commission waived the prohibition of corrugated metal. However, sorry, I'm just looking at our ordinance real quick. So, Kyle, just so I'm clear, sorry, I'm just looking for, where does it actually state that there's a prohibition on corrugated metal?
It does.
Where?
It does on, bring it up.
Subsection D.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Would the friendly amendment be the
Sheet metal
applicant
corrugated.
shall provide a building material consistent with the intent of our ordinance?
We need to waive, so yes, I think for the condition, but I think for the finding, we still do need to waive the corrugated metal. If that technically the applicant is going, but we can
If he
add,
changes the material, he's gonna provide some other material. I think what we wanna waive, I guess, I guess we wanna tell the applicant that they're allowed to provide a building material that meets the criteria that you listed earlier. It gives staff that opportunity.
And I know that I know that we have discussed the south elevation being against the train tracks, and not very visible. And the reason why I'm kind of a little bit hung up on this is because it's going to be it's going to be what, a 40-foot building, 40-foot tall building?
Is, what, 32? 32.
Okay, and will it be seen by the areas it will be tall enough will you be able to see it from the parks across the railroad tracks? And the residences across, that's kind of where I'm,
Well, yeah, and I understand the concern, because even though that property on the other side of the tracks is vacant at the moment, it's, empty land, we don't know if there's gonna be residential that ends up
Yeah.
going there, or a combination of residential, industrial.
that looks like a perfect spot for a developer to put for a developer to build a big apartment complex 3 years down the line, and that apartment complex might be 4 or 5 stories, and then they'll be looking at the back of a building that we deemed isn't important, and that's kind of what I'm,
yeah, I understand the concern. I will just note that that site that you're referring to is zoned industrial, and from a street view from near the park, there is screening on that side of right near the tracks, and then since they have the retention, we're gonna just mix that up all night, with the berm, it's a berm, right? With landscaping, I think that will do a fairly sufficient job of screening the building. I share the same concern. But I just wanted to note that there will be that screening, as well as there is screening on the other side and the industrial zone. We didn't change that in the,
There's some
That's not
pretty-
proposed to
There's some
change
pretty
it.
tall growth trees along the train track.
The chair change.
the future land use map also designated as industrial, and I think our update to the zoning ordinance, did we designate it as,
recall.
we might have actually designated as
Still in-
residential, so it's a good point, because I think it is an opportunity site for residential, but.
I mean, the edge was built, was it the edge that was
Edge.
built?
Something like that.
Very similar,
Yeah.
in a similar location across the railroad track, so
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to avoid a future issue with.
So, so in terms of the phrasing of the finding, I would propose that the planning commission waive, section, 24-184D1D, which has the, prohibition of the sheet metal or corrugated metal, although if we wanted to make it more specific to corrugated metal, that might be more appropriate. But because, as the applicant stated, that it's probably something that is actually corrugated metal, but quoted durable, consistent with design intent of the code. Because otherwise, I don't think that it's consistent with that conversation that we were just having. So I think we need that waived prohibition of corrugated metal. And, but then strike, approve the elevations as presented, and then in the conditions below, we would identify that the building materials of the south elevation, or any, I would just say, yeah, of the south elevation would need to be reviewed by staff, and the applicant must demonstrate to staff that they meet the intent of the material per the conversation at the Planning Commission. That is also meets the standards of Section 24-184D1E. They're durable. And that also, the second part of that, condition 6, was to break up the north elevation, consistent with the conversation held, to be reviewed by staff. Long enough?
Yep, that sounds great. I support the amendment. I mean, I motion the amendment, sorry.
All right, Michelle,
Okay.
you were the second on, I believe.
I second that.
Okay.
So through the chair, I mean, just to, you know, I hate to rehash it, but I mean, I just want to make sure Christine and I have what we need. So that would
I
be,
can give you my notes if it's helpful.
okay.
Or
I mean,
do you need to clarify anything though?
Christine, do you?
Yeah, just for the minutes, I just want to make sure that, I phrase the minutes the exact way the commission wants. So I think the notes would be helpful, so thank you.
To summarize, a waiver on the corrugated metal. Just make sure, because everyone probably up here wants also a summary. Waiver on the corrugated metal, striking the approved elevations in the finding, and then the condition 6 is the provisions on the building material and also on the breaking up of the Bermuda side
Front
elevations.
facade, yes.
And then don't forget condition 7, which is the addition of the sidewalk.
Correct,
Yep,
yeah.
which that didn't change. Yep.
All right, any further discussion based on the amended motion? All right, there is 6 of us this evening, so we need 6 for an approval. So I'll have a roll call vote, please.
Hagfors,
Yes.
Ms. Shelley,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Raisin,
Yes.
Councilman Polka,
Yes.
and Chair Foster.
Yes. Thank you for everyone, to the applicant, to staff, and to the commission for working through that so that we can try to get the best outcome possible. Our ordinance is gracious in that it allows us some waivers so that we can work through these things that unfortunately means that we have to do a little bit more planning at the dais, but I appreciate everyone's support on that. All right, well, we are moving into administrative items. Christine or Kyle, do you have anything for us this evening?
I just have one thing. So I think our DDA director, Jenny, popped in here earlier. She put some solar eclipse sunglasses on that back table. And the DDA encourages everyone to grab a pair and tag downtown Ferndale next week for the solar eclipse.
Awesome. I'll be in Ohio. Should I still tag DDA?
Yeah, of course.
With my glasses. Awesome. Anything else, Kyle? Okay. Anything from the commission? All right. Next meeting, do we have set yet or TBD?
It's still set for weeks from today. What is that, Christine? It would be the 17th.
All right. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We will adjourn the meeting at 7:44 PM.